Okay, here we go. Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, Thanksgiving. Today we are starting the last Masechta in Seder Zerahim, Masechtas Bikkurim. This is very exciting. We started this project back in Elul, and it took about 3 months to go through Seder Zerahim, and Rich Hashem will be making the Siyum on Sunday morning in my house in Muncie. If anyone wants to come, please reach out to me privately. Bikurim. Okay, today's shiur sponsored the Ilay Nishmas Aaron Nachum ben Simcha Cohen, Yoshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha Sar B'Shmuel Leib, and Binyamin Moshe ben Yosef. May the Hashemas all have an aliyah. And the first week of Kislev was sponsored by the New York State Chaplain Group. Thank you for your sponsorship and for your contribution to the chaplains of New York. Okay, jumping into Bikurim, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. So, what are Bikurim? Bikurim are the first fruits that the farmer has to give when he harvests his field in Eretz Yisrael. And there's a Parsha in Kisavo, which is Parsha of Bikurim, that he reads when he brings it to the base of Mikdash. It starts from Hayek Kisavo and it goes through the first 11 psukim of the Parsha is all about Parsha's Bikurim. The actual reading part is from Rami Avi, I believe, and we're going to get into that. But anyways, so there's two chiyuvim. The chiyuv is to bring the bikurim, and then the chiyuv is to recite the parsha. And there's different requirements for each of them. So Mishnah Al, Perek Al Mishnah Aleph, Yesh Mevim Bikurim. There are those who bring bikurim and recite the parsha. Bikurim, Mevim Lo Korin. Then there are those who bring the bikurim and they don't read the parsha. The Yesh Einan Mevim, and there are those who do not even bring bikurim. So what's going on? So the Mishnah is going to explain all of them. Elush Einan Mevim. These people do not even bring bikurim. Hanotel the sof shalo. Someone who plants a tree in his own land and then he bends a branch from it to the private property of someone else or into public property, so that a new branch grows so that the branch now grows a new tree over there. Or the opposite, he bends a branch from a tree planted in a private property or public property that he does not own, and he bends it into his land, where the branch now goes into a new tree. So in both cases, he cannot designate the fruit of those trees as bikurim because they're not his. They're not entirely his. They're partially his, but they're not entirely his. Anoteach l'soch shelo, the hivrich l'soch shelo. Someone plants a tree in his own land and bends a branch from it into another part of his own land. You want to join us? No. But there is a public path or a public road in the middle that the branch then passes beneath a public path or a road, and it grows into a tree in his land on the other side. He does not bring bikurim again because it's not entirely his. It's partially, not his, and therefore he does not bring bikurim. Maybe Yehuda says that in a situation like this, that he can bring bikurim from the fruit of either tree. Because according to Yehuda, anyone who has permission to dig a hole or tunnel under public property, and therefore, if he has permission, then it's considered his, and therefore, it's he can bring bikurim. If he doesn't have permission, and he does it, with a loophole, that he's not going to be able to bring the bikurim. Mishnah Beis, tam maybe. Why does one not bring bikurim from produce that draws some of its nourishment from other people's land? What's the problem with that? I mean, because the pasuk says that the earliest of the first fruits of your land. By specifying your land, the pasuk implies that the bikurim must be from. You can't bring bikurim unless it's from that all of its growth, all of its nourishment comes from your land. It's not your land. Kind of like you have like type of sukkahs, you have klachtam lachem, has to be to own the swig, and you have other things as well. Where you have to have complete ownership and rights to this tree in order to bring the bikurim. Recent the hechacharos the kirkom gazlan emavim also atam. Sharecroppers, tenant farmers, a sikrikon and a robber did not bring bikurim for the same reason. Mishum shenamar raises bikurei amascha. Because it says in the pasuk that the earliest of the first fruits of your land. So what's a sikrikon? Is a known murderer who would steal land by threatening to kill the owner. Okay, even though the owner tells the sikrikon to take the land, he doesn't really intend to give up its ownership, because he expects that one day he will recover it in court. So Mishnah Gimel. One does not bring bikurim from produce other than the shiur seminim, from which the Pasuk talks about it as well. I mean, wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. So lo tamarim shebaharim, bikurim are not brought from the dates of the mountains. Lo perish shebamakim, nor from the fruits of the valleys. Lo shemen she'eno min hamufchar, nor from oil olives that are not of the best quality. Okay, because you bring from the best of the best. If they're not good quality, then you don't bring them. So let's go on. You cannot bring bikurim before Shavuos. Anshe hart Shavuim eviu bikurim kol matzeres. The people of Mount Savoim once brought the bikurim before Shavuos, and the Kohanim did not accept the bikurim from them because the pasuk says in the Torah in Shmos Chav Gimel, V'chag hakatzir bikurim asecha shetizra b'sadeh, and the festival of the harvest, meaning Shavuos, when you bring the first fruits of your labor that you sow in the field, which refers to the Shtei Alechem. So the pasuk is describing the Shtei Alechem as the first fruits, which teach that the Shtei Alechem must be the first offering brought from the new crop, and all of the offerings from the new crops, so that bikurim may not be brought after the Shtei Alechem. Therefore, bikurim cannot be brought before Shavuos. Mishnah Dalet. Elam evim v'lo korin. These bring bikurim but do not recite the Parsha. Hager, maybe a convert or a descendant from converts brings bikurim but does not recite the Parsha. Because he cannot say the pasuk, I have come to the land that Hashem swore to our forefathers to give to us. It would be untruthful for him to say our forefathers, since he is not descended from the forefathers of the Jewish people. In Imam Yisrael, maybe, but if his mother or father is an ordinary Jew, one of his parents has unbroken Jewish lineage, So he brings Bikkurim and recites the Parsha because he is descended from Jewish fathers on one side of his family, Jewish forefathers. Okay, Shahu Mispalo Beino Levin Asma. When he damaged Shemona Esrei by himself, instead of saying Elokeinu Elokei Avosenu, the God of our forefathers, Omer Elokei Avos Yisrael, he says the God of the forefathers of Israel. Okay, Shahu be basic Knesset. So when he is praying publicly in the shul, he's the chazan. Omer Elokei Avosenu. He says the God of your forefathers. But if his mother or his father is an ordinary Jew, meaning they have unbroken Jewish lineage, Omar Elokei Avosenu, then he can say the standard nusach of Elokeinu Elokei Avosenu. Not a problem. Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Isha bas gerim lo sinasi the kahuna. Woman who is the daughter of converts, or the daughter of people who descended from converts, may not be married to a Kohen. Unless her mother or father is an ordinary Jew, someone with unbroken Jewish lineage. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov explains, he says, Echad regarding both converts and free Canaanite slaves, even up to 10 generations have passed since they were converted or freed. They uh, may not be married to a Kohen. Okay, until the descendant's mother or father is an ordinary Jew, someone with unbroken Jewish lineage, and you know, but until such time, they may not be married to a Kohen. Once there's a lineage set up, then the daughter can marry a Kohen. Obviously, a convert himself cannot be a Kohen because they're not. Um, so now we're talking about people who bring Bikurim, but they do not recite the Parsha. Apotrufus, guardians of orphans who want to bring the orphans Bikurim to the Beis Hamikdash. Vashaliach, an agent appointed by a landowner to bring his Bikurim to the Beis Hamikdash. Eved, and a freed Canaanite slave, an Eved Canaan who was freed, who has Bikurim that grew on his own land. Isha, and a woman who has Bikurim that grew on her land. Tumtum, androgynous. A tumtum is a person whose erva is covered over, and you don't know whether that he's a male, where it's a male or female. And androgynous has both male and female private parts. We're going to talk about that later in Perek Dalet. So in all these cases, Mevi'im will Kohen that they bring Bikurim, but they do not recite the Parsha. Because they cannot say the words that I have brought the first fruit of the land that you have given me, Hashem. Let's go through this. The guardian and the agent cannot say that you've given me, because he's bringing Bikurim from land that is not his. He gave it to the owner. He gave it to him. He didn't give it to him. The Eved Kanani who's freed, and the woman and the tumtum and the androgynous cannot say this word either, because when Israel was originally divided, it was not given to people from these groups. Therefore, they cannot really read the parsha. Mishnah Vav. If someone buys two fruit trees that are in the property of another person, and it was not specified whether the sale includes the land on which the trees grow, maybe Vienokore, and the buyer brings Bikurim from the fruit of these trees, but does not recite the Parsha. Rabbi Meir says, maybe Vienokore, he brings Bikurim and recites the Parsha. According to him, when two or more trees are sold, it certainly includes the sale. It certainly includes the land in the sale, even if the land was not mentioned. Therefore, the buyer is chayiv all the chiyuvim of Bikkurim, which includes reciting the Parsha. Yavish Hamayim, if someone owns a tree that receives water from a spring, but then the spring dried up, leaving the tree unable to produce fruit, next to us Ilan, or the tree was cut down, maybe Venakore, he brings Bikkurim from he brings Bikkurim, but he does not recite the Parsha. When a tree becomes unable to bear fruit, it is as though the land itself had been destroyed and lost, and therefore it has a broken chain and he cannot reset the parsha. Rabbi Yehuda says, maybe he brings the Bikkurim and he recites the parsha because despite the state of the tree, the land still exists and it's okay. And then Miyad Seres V'Harachag, maybe V'Korei, from Shavuos until Sukkot, he brings Bikkurim and recites the parsha Bikkurim. Menachag V'Ad Chanukah, maybe V'En Korei. From Sukkot until Chanukah, he brings Bikkurim but does not recite the parsha. You know, since we're in Chodesh Kislev, we're heading up to Chanukah, this is a nice little remez that Chanukah is still coming. It's on its way. Yehuda ben Beseira says, maybe Bikkurim, even between Sukkot and Chanukah, he can bring Bikkurim and recite the parsha. Okay. The reason for the machlokas is that the Chachamim say that the simcha that the pasuk says by Bikkurim, that you should rejoice in all the good that Hashem has given you, that can only be recited during the time of year when people rejoice over their harvest, which is from Shavuos until Sukkot. But according to the Chachamim, once Sukkot time has ended, that people are not rejoicing from the harvest anymore. But Yehuda ben Beseira holds that the time of rejoicing is not limited. That the reciting the Parsha Bikkurim is not limited to the time of Simcha. And therefore, they can recite it even after even after Sukkot is already over. Here, Mishnah Zion, we have a total of 11 today. We're almost there, halfway through. Hifrish Bikurav Machar, someone designated Bikurim from some of the species in his field, and then he sold his field. Maybe Venokore, he brings the Bikurim that he designated, but he does not recite the Parsha because he doesn't own the land. He can't, but since he is on the land, that he can't say the land that you have given me. Shenasatalan. And the second one, the buyer of the field, and we also have in a maybe from the species that had already been designated as Bikurim, he does not bring more Bikurim. But from a different species growing in that field, you can bring Bikurim and he recites the Parsha. Rabbi Yehuda says, Af, we also have maybe Bikurim. Even from that species that has already been designated as Bikurim, he brings more Bikurim and he recites the Parshas of Bikurim. Mishnah Ches. Hirfish Bikurim, if someone designates his Bikurim, Nirzazu, and they were plundered, Namku, or they rotted, Nignavu, or they were stolen, Avdu, or they were lost, or they became Tameh, maybe Acherim Tachteim, he can bring others in their place. The Ena Kare, but he does not recite the Parsha. Since these are not his original Bikurim, then he can't say the Parsha of the first fruits, because they're not the first fruits, they're now the second fruits. And as for the second ones, the replacement Bikurim, one who is not a Kohen is not chayav to pay the penalty of a fifth for eating them by mistake. Because we know the Bikurim, much like Truma, goes to the Kohen. If someone eats from Truma as we discussed earlier in the Seder, if someone is not a Kohen eats truma by mistake, he has to pay chomesh on top of the principal, just add another fifth, and the same thing with Bikkurim. But if he's eating from the second Bikkurim over here, the replacements, he does not need to give that chomesh. But if the original Bikkurim became tamei in the Azara of the Beis Hamikdash in the courtyard, he does not replace them. No fates. Rather, he shakes them out of the basket onto the floor of the courtyard in Makore, and he does not recite the Parsha. Mishnah Tes. And from where do we learn that the owner is responsible for them until he brings them into the base, into the Azara of the Beis Hamikdash, and the Temple Mount? For it is stated in the Torah, the earliest of the first fruits of your land you shall bring to the house of Hashem your God. This teaches that he is responsible for them until he brings them into the Temple Mount. Therefore, if they become unfit before that point, he must replace them. Someone brought Bikkurim from one species of fruit and recited the Parsha, the Chazar, the Hevi, Beiman Acher, and later brought Bikkurim again that year from a different species. The first time he brought Bikkurim, it was grapes, and then later he brought figs. Let's say, in a Korah, he does not recite the Parsha a second time; he only recites it once, even though he might bring them twice. Mishnah Yud, 2 more to go. These people bring Bikkurim and recite the Parsha. One who brings Bikkurim from Shavuos until Sukkot, Yeshuas Haminim, from the 7 species in which Eretz Yisrael is praised, meaning wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates. Miperos shebaharim, mitamaros shebamakim, mizes shemen. From good quality fruits such as the fruits of the mountains, the dates of the valleys, and good oil-producing olives, the Aver Yarden, and even if they are not from the main parts of Eretz Yisrael, but from the east side of the Jordan River. So all those people bring Bikkurim and recite the Parsha. Disagrees, and he says, we do not bring Bikkurim from the eastern side of the Jordan River, because it is not a land flowing milk and honey, as the pasuk says, which is how the Bikkurim are described in the pasuk where the mitzvah applies. It describes the land where the mitzvah applies as an Eretz Vaskalav Udevash, and that's only central Eretz Yisrael, not on the eastern side of the Jordan. And finally, Mishnah Yud Aleph, Akona Shlosha Ilanas V'Sof Shel Chaveiro. If someone buys 3 trees that are in the property of another person, Mevi V'Koreh, he brings Bikkurim from their fruits and recites the passage, the Parsha, because the sale of 3 or more trees includes the land which they grow, even if the land was not actually mentioned by the seller of the or by the buyer. Therefore, the buyer therefore owns not only the trees but also the land beneath them, which makes him obligated in all the laws of Bikkurim. Meir says, even if someone bought only 2 trees, he brings Bikkurim from their fruit and recites the Parsha, as he already said in Mishnah Vav. Certainly, if you bought 3 trees, for sure. And finally, Kana Ilan the Karkov, someone bought a single tree together with its land. The land was explicitly included in the sale. Mehi V'Koreh, all agree that he brings Bikkurim from that tree and recites the Parsha, since he owns the land beneath the tree. And Rabbi Yehuda says, Ach Bali Arisos the chachuros mevian bikurim. Even sharecroppers and tenant farmers bring bikurim and recite the parsha. According to Yehuda, the right of a sharecropper or a tenant farmer to take a share of the crops gives him some degree of ownership in the land, and therefore, and that's enough ownership for him to be chayiv to bring bikurim and recite the parsha. Thank you for joining us. Tomorrow we will continue with Perek Beis on Maseches Bikurim. Have a wonderful day.